here at the Canterbury Shaker Village today for our first stop on our Shaker Village tour of New England. So we're going to go down the street here. We're going to go past the trustee's house where basically the public would have interfaced with the Shakers back in the day. And then we're going to walk around the Shaker Village today. So let's go. That the Shaker Village was nearly 3,000 acres. So we saw some apple orchards. They were a completely self-sufficient society to the point where they became purveyors of seed sales. They developed things like the first laundry machines. And here, because of where the Shaker Village is separated from the main part of the community, they had their own fire station with their own fire truck. And we can see here in the distance the stone work for the original barn here. It was one of the longest barns in New England. And all we see now are the remnants of the stonework. What a fabulous barn it must have been. When we go to Enfield, we're going to see one of the barns there, and if we're fortunate, we're going to be able to go inside the barn in itself. Just fascinating, the ingenuity of how they built things thinking from the top down of feeding animals and storing hay. So that's coming in our next stop at the Enfield Shaker Village. Okay, so we've been walking around what really was the working part of the Shaker Village here in Canterbury. And as I said, there were around 300 people here at its maximum. It was a celibate religion, and the men and women lived in separate areas, had separate duties, if you will, and had, in general, limited contact with the outside world. But the only real contact coming from the trustee's house, which is where the head eldress and head elder would have lived and worked. And there was a store in there, and we can just see that brick building behind me with these massive oaks, beautiful oak trees here. And but that concludes our visit here to the Canterbury Shaker Village. I hope you've enjoyed some of the sights. I did not go in any of the buildings out of respect to the tour parts of the program here at the Shaker Village. It is an active museum, and you can get guided tours and self-guided tours from within going into the buildings. Beautiful buildings, the design, the innovations that the Shakers had created here in this Shaker Village, from even those little rockers on the bottoms of the chairs that we take for granted today, is something that the Shakers had developed. But they didn't patent anything, so you know, it was up for grabs by anybody that took it, but they created the innovation in itself. So here I'm going to close with the last view of the chapel, of the meeting house, and we'll see you in Enfield. Okay, here we are at the Enfield Shaker Village, and we can see some very beautiful buildings here behind me. We're going to go into and walk around these buildings while we're here. So this Shaker Village was about 2,000 acres at its high point, and had about 200 people at its high point of any given time. So you can see that clearly, you know, it had been a men and women's society of division of work, but working together, they were able to achieve so much in their time, and you can see that they really developed to the buildings, like where they commissioned these buildings to be designed and built. And these are stone buildings that we're going to look at, as well as the chapel in itself and a couple of the outbuildings. So let's go. So here we are, just much like the Canterbury Shaker Village. We're going to end here in the Shaker graveyard of Enfield. So at one time, there actually were individual markers in here, but when the Shaker Village closed, they requested that the stones be removed and a map be made. But again, going back to we live together as a community, a singular gravestone was put in to just say that this was where the Shakers are interned. So kind of a nice fitting end to our visit to the community and village of Enfield. And so we're going to head on to Watervliet next on our New England Shaker tour. Well, all right, there you have it. Day one of our New England / Northeast Shaker Village tour. So we started in Canterbury. We ended up in Enfield for day one. Two great villages that we visited today. And then tomorrow we're headed out to Watervliet, which is right by the Albany Airport. And then we're going to make a little surprise visit over to Mount Lebanon, then to Hancock, just a stellar, well-preserved and docent managed facility, great for kids. It's a great facility to visit. And then we're going to stop in Harvard, which the community's not really, the buildings are there, but there's really no museum anymore. But we're going to stop and see that village as well, just to see how they've, converted from Shaker life to worldly ownership and usage of those buildings. So we'll see you in our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video. Thanks. Okay, well, remember, if you like the video, please give it that thumbs up or subscribe. We thank you very much for your patronage and watching the videos as we go on all of these different journeys. So thank you and have a great day.